Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're either watching Job Search TV at jobsearchtv.com or listening to this as No BS Job Search Advice Radio. I'm a coach now. I used to be a professional recruiter, did it for a long time, and this show in podcast form has been on for almost 10 years now, and the video version even longer. And what I like to do from time to time is bring on an expert to talk with you about some element of job search. And today I've got a good one. Olivia Jarris is an MBA who teaches executives who are in top management, doctors, lawyers, engineers, highly driven career professionals in every industry, how to accelerate their career growth by using market data, persuasion, negotiation tactics, professional branding, resumes, and LinkedIn. That was a lot. Olivia, welcome. Thanks for making time today.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. You look excited to be here. And
I'm excited.
Good. Your appearance is congruent. That's great. Now, you cover a lot of territory professionally. How did you get into this field that prompted you to cover all this domain knowledge? What's your background?
Well, do you want the real story or do you want the BS story? The fluff story?
Let's see now. Real, phony, real, phony. Let's go for real.
All right. Well, I don't know if you remember where you were back in the recession, the Great Recession days, 2008. It was not a pretty time for a lot of us. I don't know. Do you recall?
Let's put it this way. I was a headhunter and I had spotted something coming in 2007 and wrote a blog post called Game, Set, and Match that I said something's shifting because I was home on the day that the term subprime mortgage was first said on CNBC. And I understood that I never thought it was going to be that bad, but I understood that the hiring markets were going to slow down. And I was in New York for Bear Stearns and a number of the other financial collapse firms at that time. So, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So during that time, I actually was working for Mercer HR, like one of the largest HR consulting firms in the world. And I was doing executive compensation and setting all these golden parachutes and market pricing jobs and all these things. And, I had no clue what was going on. And then one day, our boss calls us into an office. There's this total stranger. Here I am thinking, oh, they're going to give us this assignment in Abu Dhabi, or we're going to go somewhere cool and do market pricing. Comp. Well, those manila envelopes were actually our layoff packages. Everybody got caught. And I was like completely shocked and stunned. I didn't really know what to do. I was fairly young. So I was like, all right, well, what ensues next is I need to find a job, right? So my husband at the time was deployed in Iraq, and I started applying for jobs. Nothing. I started applying. Well, one morning, I had the realization as I was going in at this point, because I was eligible for unemployment. So as I was going to claim unemployment, I had the realization that I'd applied to 1,231 jobs over the last few months.
Folks, just catch that number for a second. 1231. She kept the record to know it was 1231.
Well, for anyone who knows about claiming an unemployment check, you can't just show up and claim a check. You have to show proof that you've applied to jobs and the rejections or acceptances and out of 1,231 job applications, do you want to know how many interviews I got?
2.
Well, 5.
Okay.
But guess what? I got 0 job offers. Even McDonald's rejected me. And here I was like I had that epiphany that morning, and I go into the unemployment line, which you had to line up like 3 hours. I was there at 5 in the morning before they opened up at 8, where there already was a line around the corner of the building, because during the recession, like, things were tough. Things were really tough. Anyhow, so 3 hours later, it was my turn. And that was actually the week that McDonald's also had rejected me. So I was feeling like rock bottom. Here I was alone. My husband was deployed in Iraq, and I wasn't getting any traction with my job. And as I'm walking up to the counter and I'm showing the clerk my stuff, he's looking at my resume, he's looking at my job applications, and I went to Tufts University as an undergrad, and so it was clear on my resume, which is not a bad school, but he looks at my jobs, looks at the McDonald's one glaring there, and he looks at my resume, and he's like, geez, I guess that expensive East Coast education didn't really pay off, did it? I was freaking crushed. I literally didn't even make it out of the building. Yeah. And I started just freaking bawling my heart. I felt so worthless, so dejected. All I wanted was to be a working contributor to the workforce, yet I was being rejected. And I remember that was rock bottom moment. And I had this moment where it was just, I said, enough. I'm done. I'm going to figure out how to crack this freaking code. Because this is not okay. There's something, it's not that the workforce is rejecting me, there's something that I'm doing that is not right. And that, in essence, really started the trajectory to where I am right now, which is salarycoaching.com.
I'll just simply say where you were allows you to see one of the simple truths that I talk about is that the skills needed to find a job are different, but complement the ones needed to do the job. And most people just operate from the perspective of, okay, if I just announce my background, that this is what I've done, and it's wonderful, I will get hired. And it doesn't work that way. It's a completely different skill set, right?
Absolutely. It's really tied more with understanding how to influence behavior and persuade people.
Right. And one of the things I was really interested in about you was your work with women and doing salary coaching for women. And, I'm your basic dumb guy. Well, maybe not so dumb, but I'm a guy. And, I always hear this stuff about women not negotiating. And I know when I was doing headhunting, they negotiated with me. They didn't necessarily negotiate with employers. But I've always been curious, what is it for women that makes it hard to negotiate?
Well, and that actually kind of ties in with another story about how actually salary coaching for women got started, is that I went subsequently, I landed some insane jobs, like my dream job working at the equivalent of the World Bank. And then I ended up having a posh corner office job at an Ivy League institution doing compensation. And I was reading actually one of Sheryl Sandberg's article on women and how they needed to lean in and do these things. And I just got furious. Here I was setting thousands of fat salaries as a compensation manager, being completely impartial to gender and race and any kind of nuance that would really jeopardize equality. So I actually decided that I was going to prove that there is no such thing as a gender wage gap. So I started going through the thousands of salaries that I'd set over the years and realized that there was indeed such a thing as a gap. And whenever I'd recommended a salary range for female versus a guy, the woman would be hired hovering around the 25th percentile, while as a guy would hover around the 50th percentile. So I'm like, whoa, what gives? So I started talking to the hiring managers and even to some of the women involved in the negotiations. And what became glaringly apparent is that when it comes down to a negotiation, women either don't know their worth, or even if they do, they don't know how to advocate for it. And that is in essence why we have a gender wage gap, because it's not popular for companies to pay unequally. And the government is really pushing as many regulations as they possibly can. Things can obviously be better, but the reality is, as women, we need to be shouldering a little bit of responsibility here. And that's how salary coaching for women was born.
Now, it's interesting. There were two parts to your answer. One is they don't know their worth, and the other one is they don't know how to advocate for it. Information is readily available about what firms pay for certain types of positions, whether it's at payscale.com or Glassdoor or a variety of different places. There's data there that is constructed along a range, let's say. At a particular institution, I'm just going to pick a name at random, Goldman Sachs. They pay for an associate a range of this, a VP of this, an MD of that. The information's there, and you're saying they still come in, or your experience was 25th percentile for women.
Mhm. So, to your point, though, I will say, as a compensation person, like whenever I hear people say like a pay scale, Glassdoor, all the, I kind of cringe to myself because Goldman Sachs is not looking at pay scale or Glassdoor to set
No.
salaries. They use salary surveys. So at Salary Coach, we actually buy the surveys and the databases so that we have like legitimate data, the same data that they would be using at Glassdoor or at Goldman Sachs, right? So that's on the one end. But when the difference comes between a woman and a man to figure out what they're worth or what they're going to ask for, a guy, and this is societally ingrained behaviors that a guy, it's okay for a guy to be assertive, direct, uncompromising. If you go ahead and ask, say that the data that you have says that you should be asking for $100,000, it's okay for you to go as a guy and ask and be assertive and direct about it. And you may either get it or you may not. Like, you are not as emotionally vested as when a woman goes in and asks the same, right? So when a guy goes and he asks if he gets it or doesn't get it, meh, it happens, right? But when a woman asks, and when a woman's assertive and direct and uncompromising, whether we like it or not, it ends up falling in the person who's receiving this assertiveness and directness. It comes across as aggressive in one way or another. It can be very subconsciously, but the reality is, as a society, we are trained to perceive, and have been for millions of years, the female person or individual to be nurturing, to be kind and empathetic and trust building. So these traits, like when you ask in that way, it just doesn't fall the same way that a guy asks. So preemptively, a woman's gonna like pull back her ask, knowing intuitively, like this is nothing that you do consciously, you do it intuitively. You're saying, okay, I'm just gonna ask for 85 because I don't want to come across as aggressive.
Interesting.
No.
Interesting. And my first reaction, and folks, this is going to be the last of the dumb guy part of the interview. We're going to go into the fixes next. But, it's interesting for me because often when I coach people, I look at it from the perspective of there's a difference between an $85,000 a year person and a $100,000 a year person and 120. And thus the $85,000 a year person does a lesser job. Not that they're doing the equivalent of the other two people's job, the 100 and the 120, but the firm is getting them for less. They tend to get slotted to a lower level position. Your experience too, or no?
As in, I'd say the qualifications of a woman aren't usually tied to the salary offer that she receives. So more often than not, in our experience at salary coaching, is that women tend to work really hard, be star performers, and then they come to the realization, oh, I'm being underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
And a great example, this one woman who, in the investment banking world, realized in a conversation at a cocktail party, she's a very, very high level executive in the investment banking world, realized that she was being underpaid to the tune of $250,000, $500,000, right? But she worked twice as hard. She actually had two jobs and was only being paid for one. And it makes sense. Like, as a business owner, you don't want to pay more than you have to, right?
Hmm.
And the analogy that I usually use with women is, if you saw your favorite pair of shoes, or like the shoes that you really want on sale, would you really go to the counter or the cash register and try to pay full price for it? No, nobody would do that.
It's funny, he reminded me of a woman who was like a celebrity financial person on CNBC back in the 80s. I won't mention the firm she was associated with. I have no idea if she's still working or retired, but she never made partner with her firm. She was kept at an MD level. Even though she was the face for the public of this organization, she was the one who was rainmaking a ton of business. Her analyses were fabulous. It brought money into the firm, never made partner. Unbelievable. So, what can teach me? How would you, as a woman, start to change the habit? And I don't want to say speak aggressively or present aggressively, because that doesn't sound like the right solution, because it may not fit her in how she presents negotiation. How does she approach this in a different way to get the result that she really wants?
Well, I think that the starting point of kind of getting you there, if you were Jeffina, or
I'd be an ugly Jeffina.
you'd make a doll. So what triggers most women is to finally say something about it is when it's become intolerable, and they come to the realization that I am being severely underpaid. Like when it's emotionally they've pent up too much that they have to let it go as assertiveness. And that 99% of the time will result in you getting a raise, but it will be a pity raise. It won't be the true raise that you actually deserve. Why? Because you're going at it with your emotions rather than the rational argument as to how you are truly contributing to the bottom line, right? So, first point is really to understand how you contribute to the bottom line of your company. And this is where a lot of women, in attempts of being loyal and feeling like they're in support of the company or contributing to the company, take on jobs and do tasks that truly are meaningless to the bottom line, like taking notes, making coffee. Like we voluntarily put ourselves in subservient position, right? So when I would have you look at the tasks that you're currently doing for your company and which ones are the meaningful ones to the bottom line, you'll probably find that a lot of them are really meaningless. So I'd start kind of shifting you towards, okay, maybe start volunteering for those projects that really have an impact, that make you more valuable to the company. Because the reality is, making coffee and taking notes is a very replaceable skill set.
You betcha. And you reminded me of I forget who the CEO who was speaking, but his thing was about women having a seat at the table. Because what he started to notice is when he was at the board meetings and he was in the conference room, the women were seated at the seats outside the table.
Table, yes.
So what he did was just reverse it. The women were seated at the table, the men were at the outside, because the men all competed for being at the conference table because they had a seat at the table then. And that shift, because he brought attention to it about how it felt to sit on the outside, started an awareness in the organization about women having a seat at the table. I wish I could remember who it was because they deserve the compliment for it. But you know, I bring it back to the appearance of importance as much as the tasks that they do. Positioning yourself in the way that you can be seen and heard and contribute rather than
And
always support.
perception is so key and fundamental. People often forget that only 20% of what you're saying is really what's being communicated, right? The other 80% is being said by nonverbal communication. How you dress, how you come across, your body language, your shoulders, your demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't realize how much is internalized just by reading our body language.
Body language and wardrobe. Wardrobe these days, most men fall down on that one. Women tend to be much better dressed than men are. But no matter, it tends to be tolerated from the men. And the well-dressed woman is expected.
Yeah, yeah.
Again,
And
part
those
of,
are expectations that you can see. Here's the thing. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, wow, you must be an uber feminist. And I'm like, no, not at all. I'm a complete realist. I understand that how a woman dresses can have a way bigger impact than what a guy can ever do with his wardrobe. So if you understand how to use that wardrobe to your advantage as a woman, you can get 10 times the result the guy can ever get. Because and whether you call it sexist or not, like, the reality is if you dress sharp as a woman, is if you really convey the message that you should be and want to be conveying with your wardrobe, you become irresistible. Does that make sense?
makes a lot of sense. And irresistible is one of those double-edged words in male hearing. That's
What
can,
I'm saying, it can come across as very much sexist, but the reality is, as women, we have some just God-gifted tools that guys don't have.
right.
Our ability to empathize with people, our ability to nurture and just sense what's going around. We have this ability to be multitaskers that men don't really have, right? And I'll put you in a scenario that's really just so common and is so descriptive of this, right? A guy and a girl go out on a date. And for the guy, he's thinking, great, I have a date. Maybe this works, maybe it doesn't, right? For the girl, she's thinking, okay, I'm excited. This is going to be fun. I hope it works out, because imagine what it would look like if we get married. Oh, what would our kids look like? But I don't really like his job. Will the mother-in-law like me? You know what? He's going to not like what I'm wearing. Like, our minds as females goes in so many different directions. It's insane. But see, we can use it in the stereotypical, oh, woe is me way. Or you can use it to an advantage, because when you enter the negotiation room, when you enter the boardroom, wherever it is, you put those tools to work externally. You can sense everything that's going on in that room. You can see if someone's having, and this is what we call in our inner circle, we call it becoming an awareness ninja. You can see how your boss is feeling. You can intuitively sense how the room atmosphere is, what their body language is saying. Like, when you stop, you as a woman, you get out of your head and use these tools to assess what's going on externally, you can nail negotiations and really you can get whatever you want.
And I think for a lot of women, they have one huge advantage over men in that most of the negotiations I was involved with when I was headhunting were all done by phone rather than in person. And that was true of the people that I represented as well. So I always think of women being able to hear what is said and not said better than most men can. And the not said is the important part of that, because the said that's the speech. That's the typical way that they sell. That's the corporate BS. But what isn't said, what's omitted, she can pick up on that most men really can't.
Yes. And what happens with a lot of women, like the women who take the corner seats in that boardroom or the women who don't negotiate, is that they've turned all of these abilities inwards. It's a double-edged sword. If you turn your radar externally, you can perceive everything. But if you turn it on towards yourself, pardon my French, but you're screwed. You're going to get in your head and you're not going to get any kind of results.
And thus you're going to go into a loop where you're not getting results. All you're doing is processing. So we had spoken about knowing your value and being prepared to ask for it. What else does she need to do in order to get into that negotiation and get the result that she wants?
I think there's really a step beforehand, and which really ties in with what we're talking about right now, is getting in the right mind frame and actually believing that you're worth what you're worth. Because if you go in and ask for whatever it is, like, okay, even if you have a coach that tells you you're worth $100,000, and this is a strategy for you to ask, and this is how you should dress, this is what you should say. Like, if you don't believe it yourself, no one's gonna believe it.
Right.
This is, again, part of what you're not saying. It is so palpable when someone's being fake, when someone's not being genuine. So if you go in and ask for $100,000, but you don't really even believe that you're worth it, why would anyone give you what you don't even think you're worthy of? Like, there's something beyond words, beyond body language that permeates when you're not in the right mindset.
The energy, the energy of insecurity leaks out.
Absolutely.
And male or female, you can detect it. And once it's detected, I negotiated on behalf of so many people. I was the buffer for them from making the dumb mistakes or correcting the dumb mistakes that they made that would have proved so costly. Sometimes I could rectify them. Sometimes no amount of persuasion would allow a firm to shift off of, we know we can get him, we know we can get her for this amount of money. We're not moving off of that.
Exactly. So there is, like, kind of like what you're talking about. There's that point of no return when you've made it so abundantly clear that you're not feeling worthy of either the position or the amount, but they're still willing to trust you, but they're not going to cross that line of giving you what you really should be asking for, because it's sensitive.
Right.
They know they can get you for a lower amount.
So going in with the right mental attitude. And to me, folks, that starts at interview number one when they ask the question. So, and this first question is, in the states where it's still legal. So how much are you making now? What are you looking for? Are you willing to be flexible? That's the sequence of three questions in those states that it is. In the states where it's no longer legal, what's your salary expectation? Are you willing to be flexible? And when you say, sure, I'm willing to be flexible, you've already conceded. You're not going to get that number. So right mental attitude going into it, recognizing that every question about compensation is part of the negotiation, getting a sense of what your value is going in. And what was the fourth thing? I'm sorry, I just had a brain cramp. When I get to four things, I run into problems.
Knowing how to ask.
Knowing how to ask. So let's go into knowing how to ask a little bit more. So I defer to you. You're the expert.
What I would say when it comes down to salary negotiations, so when a recruiter or a headhunter goes into the sequence of questions, what I usually tell women to say, because I'm a firm believer, you do not give a number first. And obviously, you're fighting with an uphill battle, right? These are your experts. And this is where I'm like, well, ladies, this is where you bring in your femininity and say, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate you asking that question. Because the reality is, for whatever reason, right? I've been working so long at this other company that I've kind of really taken my finger off the pulse of my market. And I would love your help in figuring out how a company like this one would value someone with my background and skill set relative to this position.
Interesting. It's the put your arm around them and be my ally in this approach. I'm not sure. Help me.
Right. It's the victimize yourself. Because as women, like, it's not really victimizing, but we can play that role really well. And as human beings, we're all in the world of marketing, it's called the hero's journey, right? We
Mhm.
all like to be the hero in the knight in shining armor at the end of the day, right? So when someone asks for help and they're being genuine with us and they're being kind of fully transparent, they're putting themselves in a vulnerable position relative to you, more often than not, you're going to want to help them.
Interesting. Taking advantage of that emotional desire to be helpful and getting them off the script.
Recruiters are playing the exact same games at the other end of the table with how they're asking their questions. I'm just teaching them how to play back. It's a game.
Right. And in that game, it's useful to get them off the script and turn them into the ally by, I'm not exactly sure what I should be asking for. Because I've been working hard at my organization, getting great attention, but I haven't been paying attention to markets. So what should I be asking for is a nice approach to put it back on them to offer
To
up
help
the
you.
numbers.
And usually recruiters aren't really expecting that.
No, no, because they're used to dealing with guys who direct them to the point, and that's easy for them. It becomes a yes no question at that point. But be my ally, uh, very different. So you find out the number of the range from them at that point. And now you're going through the interview process and you get the offer.
Yeah.
And it's less than what you were looking for, or was the low end of that range. How does she respond? Or have I skipped over parts of this that I really should be circling back to?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of different things that I would do. First, I always have all of our ladies have many pans on the fire. Like, you should never just be talking to one recruiter.
Right.
And in fact, so we have this thing called the inner circle, right? And when they join, they get access to like my vetted list of over 500 recruiters in the country, right? So they kind of get like they need to like have many things going on at the same time, right? So that they have leverage in this conversation. So when it comes in and you get a lowball offer, say it's $85,000, right? And you were hoping for $100,000. It depends, obviously, what other peripheral elements are being offered. So say, for example, they have a relocation bonus or a sign-on bonus that's $15,000, right? The one way of doing it is kind of asking for those things to be rolled into your base so that your annual base is higher. But where I would start first is if you have to accept the offer, I would accept the offer first and then negotiate the salary. So the way you would do that is, thank you, Jeff, for the offer. I am thrilled. I can't wait to start. Sign me on. That said, I really need your help. You see, I was expecting to get closer to, I would probably say 110 because I'm kind of ballsy. Pardon, I just realized like mainly your audience is, but when I say that in a female audience, it's totally fine. I would probably say like I was expecting something a little bit closer to $110,000 based on the research that I've been doing in my market. Can you help me get closer to that number? Now, in my world, a negotiation doesn't start until you hear no. So if they're willing to give you $110,000 right there, I would consider that a complete fail because they're obviously giving you something that they were willing to give. A negotiation has to get you what you want, right? And maximize what you can get from the negotiation table. So they're probably going to say, no, I'm sorry, this is what HR told me that we could get. And this is where kind of a bit of a cycle ensues, right? Where you're going to accept their no and acknowledge it because people like to feel grounded and understanding that like I've stated my case is no, and I'm standing firmly on solid ground. Like people like to feel that their no has been anchored and accepted. So you go, I would say, I completely understand, Jeff, that it like HR won't allow it. But then you pivot and go, what can I do to help HR reevaluate my salary? So you ask a question anchoring on that excuse, because that is going to lead you into this loop of he or you, in this case, you're probably going to say, no, I don't really think that it would work that way because it's the comp band or blah, 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 whatever excuse it is. See, what we're doing with these cycles, and then I'm going to go into acknowledging, accepting your no, and kind of anchoring on that last bit of your response and asking another question tied to it. Because the first no that you get is more than likely nothing to do with the actual reason why you're not getting that dollar sign. And you know this pretty well.
Right. It's normally the quick bureaucratic, we blame the other person, they're the one responsible for the decision. I'm just the messenger. I'm the one who, fill in the blank. And thus the excuse is baked into the bureaucracy.
Exactly. But if you kind of keep following the no to disarm the real reason why they're not paying you or not wanting to pay you, you realize it's probably on one end, they might just be lazy, right? And they just want to be winning the negotiation. But once they kind of realize that they unraveled that no for themselves and it doesn't make sense, you're much more likely to get what you want. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, and even if you're dealing with someone who's stonewalling you, and in our world we call them sharks or trolls, where you're negotiating with someone who's like borderline irrational. You're like thinking to yourself, like, how on earth am I, like, how is this conversation even happening? Because their arguments are just vindictive, emotional, attacking you left and right. You know when negotiations go sour, like really sour, and it's usually when you're asking for a raise or from someone who, like, say you work for a narcissist or a sociopath, you know, and I'm putting some extreme cases here, but even in those cases when you're kind of stonewalled, when you partner with that person, when you don't take their attacks personally, rather kind of throw them back a little bit, and you respond, but by, again, not alienating them or antagonizing them, partnering with them, they'll be much more likely to say, okay, well, hey, let's table this conversation and review your position in 3 months so that you can go back and really craft your argument on how you're contributing to the bottom line and how it makes sense that perhaps they reclassify your position to the next higher level, right? So a no right now also is never a no forever. It just means you need to regroup and redo your homework.
And it's interesting because my thought process from my headhunter days is a couple of different things. Number one, using the example of the sociopath. Okay, you now detected in the course of the negotiation you're going to work for a sociopath. We now go, time out. Why would I want to go to work for a sociopath? And that's my thinking. And I understand people get invested in getting the job. Sometimes there's a financial need, like there was at the time when your husband was in Iraq. There really probably was not much of a cushion to work with, if at all. So you've got to solve it, and you tolerate things that under normal circumstances with more money in the bank you'd never tolerate. So I get that part of it. But at the same time, I always encourage people, if this is your circumstance, you got to do it. I did that with my son recently, where he had gone to work for someone, quit, and now she was coming back to try and get him to rejoin. And it was, okay, what can I do? Because she's approaching me. She's texting me, looking for advice. And I just, I'll politely say I educated her about what she was doing wrong. And how it affected him as to why he wanted to walk out. Back to the situation in negotiation for a job, you file that away. if you have to take this job. And you look for confirmation once you're on board, because sometimes there's just stressors that get in the way. They're just not psycho. They're having a rough day, and it's showing up at the negotiation time because it's the last thing on the list of bad events that day.
Mhm.
And you file it away, confirm it, and then look for something else. That's how I used to approach it with people.
There's sometimes when you're already working for a narcissist or a sociopath, and you really can't. Like a lot of people just shy completely away from them. Women in particular, they just shy away. They just don't negotiate with them. Just keep their head down until they blow up 30 years down the line, and that's usually too late.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never really too late, but you've wasted 30 years of your career working for someone who is just keeping you down.
Right. And environments tend to win. If you're an environment that's depressing or is going to crush the employees, it wins.
Mm-hmm. More often than not, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I went off on this tangent, but it's interesting about you talking about, okay, you get to the point, maybe you negotiate the raise or the review for 90 days after you come on board, where you can mount more of a case because you've proven your ability, and now you go revisit it. Good.
Mm-hmm.
What else can she do in the way of negotiation that might be effective for her to get more of what she wants?
At that given point in time. So what I would try to do, is that what you mean? Like at that
I'm thinking of before she's joined, first of all, and then we can go.
Right. So what I would do, say we had this one case actually yesterday in the group where this woman was offered less than what she wanted, but there's a relocation bonus and a sign-on bonus, right? So I would say, okay, I want to accept the offer so it never gets rescinded, right? So you accept the job and then ask for the other variables. So in this case, what I would say is ask for the relocation bot. And again, partner with them, let them know that this salary is just really below my expectations. I know that I'm going to come in here and make a huge contribution. Can you help me get the bonus, the relocation bonus and the sign-on bonus rolled in to my base in lieu of a raise? So I would ask for that. I would absolutely ask for a review. And I probably wouldn't ask for a review in 90 days, but I would ask for a review in 6 months. Because in 3 months, you have not gained your footing properly. Probably not. You're just getting to know everyone. So I would actually not leave that meeting without a 6-month appointment, right? Where you're going to reevaluate the position. And my goal for you would be there to really look at the more senior level of role that you would want to be priced at and evaluate throughout those 6 months how you can be contributing at that higher level and showcase it again, kind of proving to the bottom line, right? That you are indeed contributing at a higher level than what was expected of you. And this often happens when women have to go in at a lower level position, right? That doesn't necessarily match up to their qualifications. And we see that unfortunately often. Like when you take that mommy break that we call it, and then you re-enter the workforce, you sometimes, well, often the reality is you pay that penalty of having been out of the workforce by taking on a lower level job. But that's where I'm like, okay, let's start it here, but get that review, get that date for the review 6 months down the line on paper and put it in the calendar.
In the calendar, a commitment to that in the offer letter as well, because one of the things from my headhunting days is your boss may leave between now and review time. And where's the commitment to do the review if it's not in writing? The institution can always deny.
Absolutely.
And so interesting stuff. What have I asked you about so far that I should have? What are we missing so far that I haven't covered?
I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground today, but
We have.
And a lot of these tools, it's funny because a lot of these tools, when in the off case men come our way and they're like, hey, do you guys do coaching for men too? We're like, yeah, of course. They use these tools. We can get the same kind of results, which is insane. So it's really, at the end of the day, women are more predisposed to these tools, but it doesn't mean that men can't use them as well.
I have a personal favorite from this is one of my first YouTube videos. The easiest way to negotiate a higher salary that puts an employer in the position where they're negotiating against themselves. And the idea is, oh man, I really want to join. I want to think about it for a day or two and circle back, which lets them know right off the bat that the money's the problem. You come back in 2 days, you ask all your other questions first that have nothing to do with the money, the things that they can give you easily. And then you get to the money question. You know, I was really looking for 100 and I got this offer at 85. I really want to join. Could you do a touch better? That's all you ask. Can you do a touch better? It works in every negotiation. You got a contractor coming in to work on the apartment or the house. They're going to charge. Could you do a touch better? Often they'll make the concession right then and there, and it works wonders. So, Olivia, thank you. This has been fabulous.
I love talking to you, Jeff.
For sure. How can people find out more about you, salarycoaching.com, salary coaching for women, all the stuff that you do? How can people find out more about
you? Salarycoaching.com, if you're a woman. And really for our men kind of things, if men need help, just look me up at oliviajaris.com. Or you can also check out Salary Coaching. And many women, it's funny because we have what's called like this mastermind circle VIP experience, where a lot of women, like you have to be a woman to enter, but a lot of women have entered on behalf of their husbands because their husband's either out of a job or their husband's looking for that next promotion and stuff. So they have their wives join in so that they can get like all the tools and stuff. So salarycoaching.com.
Fabulous. And we'll have the correct spelling of your name in the show notes, but for the audio purposes, spell your last name for folks.
Olivia Jaris, Jaras.
.com. Thank you. And how can people find out even more? Is there more?
Gosh, there's a book, Know Your Worth, Get Your Worth, which is salary coaching for women. It's on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. And yeah, again, like go to salarycoaching.com. If you have any questions, email us at ask@salarycoaching.com. Someone in my team will get back to you. That's how you can reach me as well.
Fabulous. And folks, we'll be back soon with someone else and some more stuff that will help you. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching with some element of job search, hiring more effectively, managing and leading, I've got a host of things I do. Reach out to me by going to my website, thebiggamehunter.us. There's a button on the home page and a variety of other pages that says schedule. You can schedule time for a free discovery call, schedule time for coaching. I would love to help you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a small icon in the lower right or a picture of me in the upper left. Subscribe to my channel there. You'll get notices whenever I release something new. If you're listening on No BS Job Search Advice Radio, subscribe to that too. And by the way, folks, you can watch me on TV. What you do is if you have a Fire TV or a Fire Stick, download the app that says Job Search TV. You can watch me there on other platforms like Roku, AppleTV. You have a Sony or a Samsung set, bingenetworks.tv. Watch me there. Have a great day and take care.